Muchas gracias. Será difícil, pero lo vamos a lograr. ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! ¡Viva la libertad, carajo! ¡Viva la libertad, carajo!
You know, when I grew up, someone that was against liberty, an authoritarian, was considered the exact same way we would look at a racist today. Other people would look at that individual with disdain and disgust. What do you mean you're against liberty? Like, who are you to decide what the people want? Like, who are you to speak on behalf of the people if you've never been elected, if you haven't been voted, if the people don't know who you are and you don't know who the people are? Why are you deciding what's best for other individuals? Like, who anointed you? And that was the mentality that I grew up with. And it's probably why the 90s were so wonderful and amazing. There was a lot of creativity that took place around the world back then. You know, it was recently after the Soviet Union collapsed, and you had writers and filmmakers creating a lot of cool stuff. And it's because the censorship was just not there. And unfortunately now, if you look in the media, you don't even find the word freedom. Like, they do not use it as a positive concept anymore. And I'm telling you this as a person who reads the daily news in order to provide you guys with videos. The only time that the word freedom is used is usually in a negative context. It's like, the freedom convoy. Oh, the far right. Freedom is actually considered to be far right. When I first started the YouTube channel, there were many articles in the mainstream media criticizing the Chinese communist system, making fun of them for having the Great Firewall of China. The concept of censoring the internet was considered to be unthinkable here in the West. The lockdowns, when China started having them, a lot of people viewed them as extremist, authoritarian, and they were like, well, it's so good that we live in the West, we would never have those lockdowns. And you know what happened eventually. And you know how they're looking now at the Chinese system, not to criticize it, but to copy it. And it is incredibly scary. So to see someone like the President Javier Milei using the word freedom and liberty again is quite wholesome. So what does freedom and liberty mean? Well, in this context, it actually means less government. It's very interesting. When I read the history books, in my country, there was a lot of emphasis on the struggle that the peasantry had towards the nobility. We still had, like, remnants from the communist ideology, and they had, like, a big focus on how the peasants were oppressed. And the way they were oppressed is that they had to pay taxes. They had to work the land, and 10% of what they made had to go to the church. And I believe like another 15% had to go to the noble that land they were working on. So I told them they would have to pay like a 25% tax. And there were riots because of that. Like, peasants were willing to go and die because they were paying way too much tax. You know, a story that's very similar to the United States independence war against the British Empire. It's like, again, taxation was the issue. And the thing is, like, if you ask most normies today how much taxes they're paying to the government, they don't know. Like, unironically, I'm willing to bet 7 out of 10 people have no idea how many taxes they pay. And the reason is that they will say, well, yeah, I mean, I have to pay my income tax, and I have to pay my property tax, and I have to pay this and that. But they always forget about the indirect taxes, which are the sales tax. And then you have, like, taxes if you start a company. Whenever your company makes money, it's being taxed. When you want to withdraw money from that company, it gets taxed. If you have an inheritance, it gets taxed. When you buy something, you pay the sales tax. In Europe, you pay the sugar tax and the alcohol tax. I guarantee to you, at the end of the day, you pay probably around 50% in tax if you add inflation to that as well. Because the inflation is also a tax. It's like you have the government entity which prints more money, devaluing the cash that you have. So it's still an indirect tax. And if you talk about lowering taxation, if you are a politician and you say, well, maybe you need to lower taxation, they freak out and they say, well, no, because the welfare, the inequality. And I'm looking around Europe and other places like California, or, you know, places that have been benefiting from left-leaning policies? And the answer is, does it cause more or less inequality? And this is the question that Javier wants to ask. It's like, well, all these leftist policies, they do cause inequality. So how about we try something else? How about we try to actually lower taxation in order to ask investors to invest? And when I asked ChatGPT how likely it is that the policies are going to be successful, it actually gave an error. Like it couldn't finish the thing. I'm sure it just happened as a coincidence. But I love the fact that during the whole prompt, it actually stopped midway, unable to continue, short-circuited. But yeah, no, they're basically saying the same thing. It's, oh my god, like the social welfare protections and increased income inequality. And it's like, well, yeah, but like, the thing that I don't get about welfare is, why do I have to pay for someone else's poor choices? Like if a person is a chronic drinker, and he gets liver disease and kidney disease, and he ends up in a hospital, why do I have to pay for that? Why can't he pay for it? Why can't his friends and family pay for his bad habits? Like, if I live my own life staying away from alcohol because I am aware that it's bad for me, if I stay away from tobacco because I am aware it's bad for me, why should I pay for someone else? Why am I forced to pay for someone's bad decisions? If someone wants to have, like, a child out of wedlock, and then realizes that not only they can't afford it, but they also want to live the same lifestyle surrounded by all the amenities they had before and go out and party, why am I responsible for that? Why should I sponsor other people fucking irresponsibly? And even if I do, right? Like, even if single moms get my money for welfare, and by the way, this is just one example, but here's something that they don't like it when you ask. How do I know that the money actually goes for the child? Like, if that person who fucked irresponsibly decides to go partying, or decides to buy makeup and buy stuff for her, is that okay though? Right? Because the money that the government gives isn't for that, is it? Like, if I have a company and I get a grant from the government, I have to justify that every single penny went towards the company. Meanwhile, if you get welfare, you don't have to justify that. You don't have to show receipts. Because the chances are you'd probably have to pay less welfare if all the money would actually go for the children, right? So this is what Javier is basically saying, is that it's not fair. It is not freedom to choose. Like, your money is taken away without your choice and is being given to other people without your consent. And the problem is that the world thinks that this is how it should be and there is no other option. So to prove that he's not just all talk, he's actually going to do something that is definitely impactful and is shocking a lot of people. He's going to shut down the central bank in Argentina. A lot of individuals were saying he's not going to go through with it, so he actually did have to go on there and say, no, this is not negotiable, it's going through. And his justification for shutting down the central bank is absolutely amazing. He's saying that through mismanagement, the Argentinian currency is worthless. The inflation is so high that the money is just as good as paper. So if you create a product that the market doesn't need, that the market doesn't want, then how can you justify existing? And take into account that the current establishment, like the current way of thinking, is that no, I mean, this is the central bank. It has to exist. It's like circular reasoning. Even though it doesn't do anything good, it has to exist. So you constantly have to pay for it, even if it's not useful. And here you have Javier going like, no, fuck yourself. Like, if you're going to make something which the public doesn't need, we're not going to pay for you. Like, no company would do that, right? Like, if you actually have a company where you care where the money is going, you wouldn't fund a department that is absolutely useless unless you want to go bankrupt. And, you know, you have, like, the concern trolls going like, oh my god, well, what is going to happen? And he's like, well, we're going to use dollars. We're going to use the USD as currency in Argentina. And no one knows what the result is going to be. It's definitely going to be better than it is now. I mean, it can't get worse than it is now, right? Like, usually a country trying something like this would have a lot of problems because, first of all, you have to secure the amount of dollars required to be in circulation so that people can actually use the currency. The United States obviously is going to love this, I mean, even if they hate Javier just for doing this, they may change their mind immediately, because you're offering a lot of control to the United States government. Like, if a country is tied to your currency, you have a lot of economic control over that nation. You know, if they instill policies you don't like, you can say, well, we're not going to give you dollars anymore, you know, figure it out. If they instill policies you do like, they can be like, okay, well, we're going to help you out. So it gives the US a lot of control. And it depends. I mean, again, if they manage to secure the number of bills required to have a stable economy, a country like Argentina isn't really that big. So on the grand scale of things, you don't need that many dollars. I guess you're tying yourself to the inflation that the US causes. So if the United States goes through heavy inflation, then your country is going to be affected as well. But it's still a very interesting move. So I'm definitely interested in his presidency, not just for the social impact that it has, that it manages to shift the overtone window and gets people to talk about economics and certain things that normally don't get to be discussed on the press. But I'm actually interested to see if his policies have any effect. And I definitely think many people around the world are also looking at it. And the right-wingers especially should pay very close attention. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.